He was instrumental in handling the biggest ever fraud in the corporate sector and worked out the plan for revival of Satyam Computers. And for this, he was closely associated with Government of India. He has been chairman of National Council on Direct Taxes of ASSOCHAM and Vice President ASSOCHAM in 2016-17. Presently, he is the independent director on the board of DLF Limited, Himachal Futuristic Communications Limited, and many other organizations of repute. He is a life member of Indian Council of Arbitration too. He is regularly involved in the consultation process of Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Corporate Affairs and is a member of various committees and panels constituted by Government of India for fiscal and commercial legislations. A prolific writer, having command in Hindi, English, French, Urdu, and Punjabi, he has authored many books on direct taxes. Gentlemen, with this, I welcome Mr. Ved Jain to take this webinar forward. You may ask questions by sending messages on Q&A tab. Thank you, Mr. Jain, for accepting the IBPC invite. And with that, now I hand it over to Mr. Jain himself. Have a good day and have a good webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dilip Sena ji. It's a pleasure to be here and I've been given an opportunity to interact with various non-resident Indians settled in the UAE. The world is passing through difficult times and we are all in the lockdown like the whole of the world. I'm doing this webinar sitting from my residence. As you all know, the India is totally locked down because of this coronavirus. And last week I got an invitation to share my views on the recent amendment made in respect of the non-resident issue by the Indian Parliament by amending the Income Tax Acts. The day this amendment was introduced on 1st February 2020 by the Honorable Finance Minister, overall there were concerns raised that how this amendment is going to affect each one of the non-residents, many of which I think a large numbers are in the UAE, in the Middle East area, that's the area. As you will recall that this amendment which was introduced on 1st February 2020, there was a memorandum explaining the provisions why these amendments are being introduced in this budget and what is the objective behind. And we must keep in mind, while I will be elaborating on the various issues, what were the objective defined in this memorandum to make these amendment in this law. As we all know that under the Indian Income Tax Act, a person is required to pay tax on all the income which accrues and arises in India. In respect of the income which accrues or arises outside India, only it is a resident which is required to pay tax. And if a person is a non-resident, then he is not required to pay tax, the income which accrues and arises or received outside India. Now, there have been apprehension on this issue that many of the Indians who happen to be a non-resident, but are using this status as a non-resident to not to pay tax on their global income, the income which accrues or arises outside India, by arranging their stay in India and outside India in a manner where they have active working in India, but that income which accrues and arises to such person outside India do not get taxed as their stay in India is less than 182 days. This was one of the objectives for which this amendment was proposed to be introduced. And the second issue and the objective was that there are many Indians who are not resident of any country. As we all know, under the law, a person by and large across the world is considered to be a resident when he has been in a country, in that country for a 182 days or more. That's a 50% of the year. That's a normal law there. And this is what we call taxation based on the basis of the residence and on the basis of the situs. And as against this, the America follows the taxation principle where he taxes its resident not on the basis of the residence, but on the basis of the citizenship. So every US citizen has to pay tax on the global income. So these were the two, I think, the concerns and two principles of this issue. Now, in order to address this issue, there were two amendments which were proposed, curtailing the period of a person who is a resident or an Indian citizen, that when he comes to visit in India, from 182 days to 120 days. So meaning thereby, in case a non-resident comes to in India and during the year his stay was exceeded 120 days, then he was to be considered as a resident and was required to pay tax on global income. So I will deal with this first issue. Now, there was a lot of hue and cry, and many people raised a concern that this period of 182 days to 120 days, being an anti-tax abuses provision, should not tax the bona fide resident of outside India who comes to India for their various type of obligation, maybe family obligations, maybe parents obligation, maybe sentimental attachment. So they visit India or regularly. So in order to address that issue, the Parliament thought it fit to make it further amendment, whereby this provision has now been diluted to the effect that this clause of 120 days or more shall be applicable in respect of only those Indian citizens which have income in India, which is the total income in India, exceeding rupees 15 lakh. The word used in the legislatures are the total income other than the foreign source income. And foreign source income has been defined to mean income from total in India and does not include income which accrues and arises from a business control or profession set up in India. So there are many entities, many non-resident which have set up in India. Based on that setup, they have income outside India, but that business setup or profession is being controlled from India. So that income will be considered to be an Indian income. Now, the result of this amendment is, now there are three categories of persons which have become a non-resident. One, a person who does not come to India less than 120 days. So there is no issue about it. So because this amendment is not going to affect him at all, because the stay in India is less than 120 days. A person who comes to India for 182 days, also there will be no impact because he is considered to be resident earlier also, and under the law, he will also continue to be a resident when the period exceeds 182 days. The third category will be of a person who is in India for more than 120 days or more, but less than 182 days. In the case of such person also, if it's his income in India, the total income in India, it does not exceed 15 lakh rupees, so then there is no change for that person also. The change will affect only such person who is in India for 120 days or more, less than income is 15 lakh rupees or more. So that person will be deemed to be a resident of India. Now, this provision is going to hit a lot on that basis to these category of person. The word used is the total income, and total income is a taxable income. So this income can be income from interest, it can be income from dividend, because now dividend has become chargeable to tax in India. It can be a capital gain, it can be a rental income. So all sorts of income which accrues or arises in India. If any one of you have an income of say 15 lakh rupees or more in India in any year, and taxable income computed according, then the visit to India has to be restricted to less than 120 days. The word uses 120 days or more. That means 119. It should not be more than 119 days. So that's why the visit to India has to be 119 days. That's the issue. Now, what will be the impact of this amendment on such category of people? The law further says that such person will be deemed to be a resident, but not ordinary resident. This does not absolve and does not solve the issue, because resident but not ordinary resident by and large are categorized as a resident, and all the benefits which are available to non-resident will not be available to such category of person. I can just enumerate what type of benefits are available to a non-resident. There are advantages or disadvantages attached to when you happen to be a non-resident. Now, advantage, since you are all in UAE, you are a non-resident present. Now, various types of income which you receive from India is chargeable to tax at a concessional rate. Take the case of a dividend. Now, dividend from Indian company earlier was being chargeable to tax as a dividend distribution tax. So no tax was required to be paid by a resident or a non-resident on the dividend income. But now from 1st April 2020, this dividend income is going to be taxed in the hand of a shareholder as an ordinary income. Now, in the case of a resident, this income will be liable for tax at a normal rate, 10%, 20%, 30%, whatever the rate. But for a non-resident, there is a specific provision in 115A, which say that a dividend income in such cases cannot be taxed more than 20% under the Indian Income Tax Act. On top of it, India has entered into double taxation avoidance agreement with the UAE, which say that dividend income in the hand of a non-resident of a UAE will be chargeable to tax at the rate of 10%. So in case you happen to be a non-resident and continues to enjoy the status of a non-resident, the dividend income which you are likely to receive from the Indian corporate, etc., is chargeable to tax at the rate of 10%. That's the benefit which is available. Similarly, there is a benefit available in respect of the certain other investment like the units of mutual fund, etc., where there is also a concession rate defined, because that is also one of the issues that how it will be taxed, because that is also a concession rate. There are judgment which says that this unit of mutual fund is akin to the dividend, and the same phenomena and same tax rate will be applicable. Then there are certain types of bond issued by the various authorities in India, including the masala bond, etc., which we call subscribed in foreign currency but denominated in Indian rupee. That is called the masala bond. So that is also chargeable to tax at a concessional rate. Some bonds are chargeable to tax at a rate of 5%. Some are chargeable to tax 10%. Now, in the case of these persons who lose their status of being in India for more than 120 days and having income of 15 lakh rupees or more from India, now they will get categorized into this category of resident but not ordinary resident, with the result that such income of dividend, interest, etc., will become chargeable to tax in their hand at the Indian tax rate, not at the concessional rate of DTAA. The benefit cannot be taken on this. Now, when this issue is being, I am deliberating on this issue, that how this is going to affect this category of person of who stayed in India for 120 days or more or less than 182 days, there can be a situation where such person may be staying in the UAE for more than 183 days or more, because India has signed a double taxation avoidance agreement with the UAE where the residential status has also been defined. And this treaty says that in case of a person, the residential status will be determined in accordance with the following provision. What? In case he is a resident of UAE, then it has to be considered whether he was in UAE for 183 days or more, then he will be considered to be a resident of India. And so far, for a resident of UAE, in case he is a person under the Indian Income Tax Act, he is considered to be a resident, then he has to be considered for the purpose of this treaty to be a resident. Now take a case, a person who happened to be in UAE for 190 days and happened to be in India for 165 days, and his income in India is say 15 lakh rupees or more, then such person will be a resident under the UAE law also, because he is in UAE for more than 183 days. He will be a resident of India also, because he is in India, stay in India is more than 120 days, less than 182 days, but his income is more than 15 lakh rupees. So under the amended law, he will become a resident, but not ordinary resident, which for all purposes is considered to be resident. Now, he is a resident of two countries. In that situation, a tiebreaker rule will apply, and the treaty provides that there are 4 steps to be gone through to identify to which country he is a resident. And the first is where this person has a permanently resident. So where he is permanently residing. So that is the one test which has to be seen. In case such person has a house in UAE, residing therein, then the tiebreaker rule will be that he has there. There's a possibility that such person may also be having a residence in India also. If then that will be the case, then the second tiebreaker will apply, where such person has personal or economic relation center. The relation. Personal means where his family lives, where his the children lives, Economic means from where his income is coming, whether doctor. In the case of a profession, it can be in UAE because the income is coming from where their family is living there. So then he will be a resident of UAE, not of India. But this can happen that his family is in India and he continues to be in UAE. He has a business in UAE, but he has also a business in India. In the case of a professional, there can be a doctor who can have a clinic in UAE also, clinic in India also. Then again, the third question third tiebreaker will be where he has a naturally about, where he naturally, meaning thereby where he naturally lives also, which in case more he is living in UAE, then probably the tiebreaker rule will go in that favor. But still, in case dispute comes in, then it will be the competent authority, both tax authority will decide to which they are. Now, just to simplify the issue is, in case you are residing in Dubai, you have got a house, your family is living with you. Still, if you come to India for more than 120 days, you have an income of more than 15 lakh rupees. Under the treaty, you can still be a non-resident for India and you will be a resident of UAE because you have a house in UAE, your family is living, your business and economic relations are in UAE. So that will be a tiebreaker that can give a grace also. But in case it is not so, you are not treated as a resident of UAE under the DTAA, then you will become a resident of India and you will not be entitled to take the benefit of double taxation avoidance agreement. That's an important aspect one need to look into. And it has a far-reaching implication because then as a resident, you need to comply with all the obligation of the Indian Income Tax Act. And there are certain obligation ways that one is that you need to file the return because your income in any case is more than 15 lakh rupees, you will be filing the tax return also. But in the income tax return, when you are deemed to be a resident under this clause, you will be required to disclose all your foreign assets. Indian Income Tax Act mandate that in your income tax return, you need to disclose all your foreign asset, which is called financial asset. There is a separate schedule attached there too. That is I believe, is a serious issue which need to be taken on this issue also. Now, I just like to run through a few slides to share with you and then have some few question answer on these issues. Let me just transfer this my presentation here on this screen. This is definition which I just worked out. I need not go into this issue. Now, here is a slide which you will see that in case your stay is 182 days or more, and your stay in the preceding year has been less than 360 days, that it doesn't affect you. And in case it is 182 days or more, then it is also not affecting because you are still a resident for that purpose. Now, this provision, the new provision will be applicable only if the total income other than the income from foreign sources exceed rupees 15 lakh and the income included from a resident India, interest income, capital gain. There can be a situation, and one thing but we must not hate, that this criteria of rupees 15 lakh will not be once for all. This is a possibility that in 1 year the income may be less than 15 lakh rupees. If that be the case, then one will be allowed to be in India for 182 days. But in case it is exceeding 50 rupees, then the criteria of 120 days will be applicable. Now, take a case in 1 year, somebody sells a property, otherwise he doesn't have an income, and they're in India, and that capital gain on sale of such property will be chargeable to tax in India, and it will form part of the total income in India. If that be the case, now that in that year in which you sell the property and your income exceed 15 lakh rupees, you will be mandated to be not to be in India for a period more than 119 days, that less than 120 days. Otherwise, your status will change. And now this type of income will get included. And these type of income which are not normally included will be included while deciding this threshold. That is the salary income, because you are employed outside India, so it will dividend income from a foreign company where you are working and you are having interest income arising from a bank account, etc. You are having capital gain you on transfer of property in India. Similarly, have a rental income from business out of India, or a business or professional income which you are running and having outside India, which has nothing to do with the Indian business. That's an important aspect we need to be. I must just clarify that by becoming a resident under this clause, two benefit you will continue to enjoy. One, interest on FCNR deposit and interest on NRE deposit will continue to be exempt. And the reason being that under the two different clauses, the resident but not ordinary resident and Indian citizen, interest earned under the Income Tax Act has been clearly specified to be exempt in these such cases. Now, these are the impact. An individual who prior to amendment qualified as a non-resident will, pursuant to the amendment, now qualify as a resident but not ordinary resident. Resident but not ordinary resident is considered to be resident under the Act for exemption, deduction, tax rate applicability, TDS applicability. As I said earlier, there will be 4 implications if one falls in this category of 120 days or 182 days. 1. Certain income which was not chargeable to tax will become chargeable to tax. Certain income which was chargeable to tax at a lower rate will get taxed at a higher rate because now you are a resident and you will not be able to enjoy that benefit of that treaty. Third, the tax deduction at source will be as per a resident and not as a not resident. So whatever the TDS provision on your income which you are having from India will be chargeable to tax as Indian resident, and the TDS rate will be also there. So with this result, now once an individual qualifies as not ordinary resident, there will be increase in scope of total income, since that some income which are exempt will become taxable. There are certain exemptions which are available. I will just go through that, which are exemptions which are will be available, will not be available. Then there are loss of concession of tax rate from 5% to 20% on certain category. Then foreign asset reporting will also be one of the incident and one of the implication on falling in this category. And then increase onus to substantiate non-taxability of income. This is another provision, and this is another thing which will affect this category of person. Now, since you are considered as a resident, the jurisdiction of Indian income tax officer will be far more reaching as compared to when you have a non-resident. In the case of a non-resident, the assessing officer has to establish that any asset located outside India is arising from the income which has accrued or arisen in India. Onus is upon the Indian tax officer. But the moment you become a resident, your global income is chargeable to tax. Do I agree that as a resident but not ordinary resident, your outside income will not be chargeable to tax? But the onus will be upon you to establish that income which is accruing outside India is in fact has accrued outside India and has nothing to do with the Indian income. Now, these are the 4 provisions where the benefit will be there. Interest paid now will be lost out. Now, presently under Section 10(4)(c), interest payable by an Indian company or a business trust on a money borrowed from a source outside India, in foreign exchange, whatever investment is done, buying various authorities, bond, etc. Now that will become chargeable to tax in case the status changes. Similarly, you have an income from a royalty or fee for technical services which you have rendered outside India or to the National Technical Research Organization like this. That income presently is exempt in the hand of a non-resident. But in case your status changes from non-resident to resident but not ordinary resident, then this income will also become chargeable tax. Similarly, interest payable by a unit. Now we have a gift city in Ahmedabad, you probably will recall, International Financial Services Center. So where you get an interest from an investment there in a unit, that interest as a non-resident is exempt, but not as a resident, but not ordinary resident. But these 2 investment which I said, FCNR and NRE exemption, will continue and it is not going to affect at all Now, these are the concessional rate which will get affected. Now, you see under section 115A, dividend income for in the case of a resident will be chargeable to tax at the rate of 10, 20, 30, whatever with the tax slab. In case your income is more than 15 lakh to become this status, obviously the tax rate applicable will be 30%. As against this, dividend income under the Indian Income Tax Act on a non-resident is chargeable to tax at 20%. But under the treaty, it is 10%, so you will be eligible for 10% benefit. But in case you fall in that category of 120 days or 182 days, then this tax concession will not be available. Similarly, interest received from Government of India concerned on money borrowed or concurred in foreign currency, the rate is 20%. Interest received on infrastructure debt fund is chargeable to tax in the hand of a non-resident at 5%, which will also go at a normal rate. Interest received from Indian companies specified in particular section is 5%. Interest of the nature and referred in 114 LD, that is what we call masala bond, etc., is chargeable to tax at 5%. Similarly, interest received on income received on mutual fund, which is chargeable at 20%. Benefit of the treaty will be 10%, will be taxed at a normal rate. Royalty or fee for technical services will get also taxed at a normal rate as against 10%. Income in the nature of interest or dividend on the GDR, Global Deposit Receipt, which are in and the long-term capital gain arising on this GDR will also become chargeable to tax at a normal rate as against 10%. That's the issue. Now, these are the fallout which can happen and probably may be counterproductive and maybe. The impact of the amendment is that only Indian citizen having more than 15 lakh rupees income will fall in this category. Now, what will be the impact? Such person need to ensure that they do not come to India for a period exceeding 119 days. Indian citizen will not be encouraged that they should come to India for a period exceeding 119 days. Or in the alternative, such Indian citizens should ensure that they do not have an income in India more than 15 lakh rupees. Meaning thereby they should reduce their income in India, not to make investment in India, not to buy property, have a rental income or something like this, but to avoid this provision of hitting them of India. Because if the income is less than 15 lakh rupees, one can easily come to India for less than 182 days. And then the other provision I have not talked about it, that was third was the some taxes payable, which we call of a person who is not a resident of any country on that issue. Now, coming to that aspect, before I take some question on that part, is the other amendment which now I should talk about is about the issue which is about a person who is considered to be a stateless person. Now, another amendment which is there is that new clause has been inserted that in case a person who is an Indian citizen and who claims to be a not resident of any country because of the domicile, etc., his income is not chargeable to tax to any country. Now the amendment has been made that such person shall be deemed to be a resident of India. This clause is specifically meant to certain business persons who manage their affair in a manner that they do not become resident of any country. Like say, one lives in India for say 80 days or 90 days, one lives in another country for another 80 days, another 80 days, another 80 days. So meaning thereby, none of the country under the definition of resident can claim that he is a resident of my country. This clause by and large is being, this provision by and large is being used mainly by sportsmen, film artists, etc., which have international presence, like tennis player, Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal. They are not resident of any country. With the result, they just pay tax on the income of that country where they have earned that income by winning that prize, etc. But all their investment, etc., are kept in a country either which do not levy tax or otherwise are considered to be tax haven country. In order to address this issue, now the Government of India has amended the Income Tax Act applicable only to Indian citizens who claim that their income is not chargeable to tax in any country because of their residence, domicile, or a similar reason. Now, this is the amendment which has been made by the by this Income Tax Act in this Finance Bill 2020. Now, consequent to this, my fear is that tax planning is a tool which is being used across the globe. Now, if you have an Indian passport, then you are considered Indian citizen. there may be many persons who are planning their affair as on date in this manner. They do not become resident of India and also are not resident of any other country, and maybe living in UAE, maybe living in BVI, maybe living in Cayman Island, etc., and they become a resident of that country also. Now, in those cases, there can be a challenge that their income, global income, will become chargeable to tax because they will deemed to be resident. Now, if they become a deemed to be resident, then Indian income, beside that, they are being considered resident but not ordinary resident. So, income which has been earned outside India will still be outside the purview. But the challenge will be they will be required to disclose all their foreign income and foreign assets for an income tax officer to determine the legitimate source of such income. And one has to justify the legitimate source of such income. And what can happen is the takeaway can be happen. If many of such persons who are holding Indian passport as an Indian citizen, in order to avoid application of this provision, implication of this provision, probably may shift their citizenship also. Because across the globe, there are many countries which offer their citizenship at a very concessional or a very easy terms. So the challenge will be how to handle these two issues, which I've said it, that in case a person stays more than 190 days and less than 180, and he doesn't want to become a resident in India, the option will be to reduce the visit to India or to reduce the income. And in the case of a stateless person or for an Indian citizen, just to think it about. So these are the issues which I think will be arising. Now, having deliberated parliamentary on this issue and prime minister, I would just like to have few questions which my audience would like to have, and to have a clarification on the practical issue which they may be facing. May I request put in the few questions which are there on this issue? I have a question here. If an NRI has set up two non-discretionary trusts for his son and daughter, does he have to disclose the creation of trust to the Indian Income Tax Authority? If the trust do not make any distribution, then there is no taxable income in the hands of the resident Indian deemed otherwise. Please clarify. Though this arising from the present amendment clarified, I believe that the person non-resident, but the but son and daughter both, in case you are a beneficiary trust potential interest and interpret it that they need to disclose they are a beneficiary of such trust, disclose the name of the trust, the country where it has been established, the settler of the trust will be required. The second question, Mohandas, government has any plans to postpone this 120-day area starting from April 2021 as a consequence of Corona, and many people would have stranded in India. May be difficult. The act has been passed now. It has been notified, and this provision is a spread over provision, nothing to do with the year end. 31st March is ending. May be difficult, but I may just share one view that you will recall long time back in the year 2004, the Parliament has passed the Finance Act of 2004, whereby interest on NRE deposit and FCNR deposit was supposed to be taxed in the hand of a non-resident. That clause was supposed to be brought on statute and applicable from 1st September 2004. But looking to the pressure which came from the various non-residents was postponed to 1st April 2005. And by the Finance Act of 2005, that provision itself was deleted, with the result that FCNR interest and NR interest continue to be exempt. I'm not sure this clause is going to be applicable from 1st April 2020. Maybe down the line, government may think that it is not being beneficial or it is a counterproductive, may amend it in the subsequent year, but I cannot assure at present. May I can have some other questions? Do I need to own your my company? No, ownership of the house in personal name is not one of the requirement. Company's accommodation, permanent accommodation is considered where a person is living. In case you are employed therein and you have got a company accommodation, so that will be, I think, suffice to apply the tiebreaker rule, where we will declare that you are a resident, and more so when you have a company accommodation. please, but as a precautionary measure, you must look into the other two aspects, that your personal and economic lies more in UAE rather than in India. Meaning thereby your family is living with you and your source of income is mainly arising from the UAE, not from India. That can also be on the issue. This is the question from Darshan Shah. I have a question from Mr. Hitesh Mangnani. Wanted to clarify if now tiebreaker rule for UAE resident is still applicable for resident of UAE if he stays less than 181 days in India, whose income is about 15 lakh in India. I have clarified, I think, in my earlier deliberation, yes, tiebreaker rule will be applicable because in case you have been living in UAE for more than 183 days or more, then under the treaty, you are a resident of UAE. But in the amended law, if you stay more than 120 days, you are a resident of India. So in that case, tiebreaker clause will be applicable. Then question is, I am a UAE resident staying in UAE 183 days and also have TRC from UAE. I must just clarify, for claiming that you are a resident of UAE, you will be required to submit tax resident certificate TRC from the tax authority in the UAE. So if I stay in India for say less than 120 days pension, then will my overseas income be not taxable in India? I will just clarify. Under the amended law, overseas income in any case is not going to be chargeable to tax in India. It is the income in India which will be chargeable to tax, and the second income which is arising from a business controlled in or a profession set up in India. So it is not that income in India will be chargeable to global income will charge you tax. You will have heard my declaration. What will happen to that certain income in India which is presently exempt in your hand may become chargeable to tax. Tax rate may go higher because your status will be of a resident. So if you are staying less than, even if you stay more than 120 days in India, that does not mean that your global income will become chargeable because your status is of resident but not ordinary resident. And that means that your income which accrues or arises outside India is not chargeable. It is only the income from a business controlled in or profession set up in India, which income arises from outside India, that will be. Probably the intention was that there are certain people who are sitting in India, running a business outside India, but managing all these affairs from India, should be discouraged and they should be charged with tax. It is also. And then supplementary to above is, in above case, do I also need to ensure that I am in India for less than 365 days in the previous year, so that in that case I cannot be in India for more than 90 days in a particular? No, sir. Let me clarify. Indian Income Tax Act under Section 6(1) has put two conditions to define who is a resident. In the income tax law, non-resident is not defined. Income tax. A person, an individual will be considered to be a resident if he has been in India for 182 days or more, or a person who in the last 4 years have been in India for more than 365 days, was in India for 60 days or more. Now, this second clause has been, by explanation, diluted. It has been said that in the case of an Indian citizen or a person of Indian origin, here the word 60 days will be considered to have been substituted by 182 days. With the result, the present provision was, for an Indian citizen or a person of Indian origin, the only criteria to become a resident was in case such person was in India for 182 days or more. Now, this clause of second clause, which was this 365 90 days, where 60 days criteria is there, this is being amended that in case of a person who happens to have an India income of more than 15 lakh rupees, this concessional clause of 182 days or the 60 days as in the case of a non-Indian citizen should be considered to be 120 days. Meaning thereby an Indian citizen who has income of more than 15 lakh rupees, if he is in India for more than 120 days or more, then only this clause will be applicable. If it is less than 120 days, it is not applicable. If income is less than 15 lakh rupees, then still 182 days. Both will be beneficial. That will be there. In above case, will I continue to enjoy lower TDS on my investment in India under UATD? Yes, if you are a resident of UAE under DDAA, as you have explained, then the tax slab, the TDS rate will be applicable, will be that of a non-resident, not of a resident. What about an OCI? What are the tax implications for an OCI? There is no change for OCI. The entire change which has been proposed in the present budget is in respect of an individual, not on respect of any other entity, whether it is an HCF, whether it is a partnership firm, LLP, or a company. What about HCF income for not ordinary residents? So that provision has also not been changed. The HCF residential status will automatically get tinkered with the result of individual because it goes with the manager of the HCF. Since the manager of HCF status will get changed, so that implication will arise on that HCF also. I think now the consulting opportunity will shift from a CA to a computer professional, as it can be easily represented in the form of a chart and program, especially with the advent of, I think, I believe, artificial intelligence. I leave it to your wisdom. It's a number of days one has to keep a track of this. Why do I need tax certificate as my residence with an entry exit stamp in India should be sufficient to prove it? No, sir. The DTAA and the Indian tax provision says in case you need to establish your credibility as a resident of a UAE, and for that one of the requirement is that you should have a TRC, and then otherwise there is a declaration form. Those who could not submit it, a 10F which has to be submitted. There also you need to give a lot of particulars. So that challenge will still be there. UAE does not have personal IT. I do agree. DTD applies only in the cash tax payment outside, where relief can be claimed in India since there is no tax in UAE, there is exposure to be considered status. No. So see, not taxable, either liable for tax does not mean that you are not paying tax in the UAE. Issue is that there is in UAE, you are a resident, you have an income which accrues and rises to you, and your exemption is not arriving because of the residence. Your income is arising, existence is arising because you are a resident of UAE, but UAE does not charge a tax on income. So the exemption is not based on your residential status. Your residential status is of UAE. Had you claimed in UAE that this income is not chargeable to tax because I am not a resident of UAE, then the answer would have been in the negative. But in this case, it will not be. Rajesh Agarwal ji has a question. If someone stays less than 119 days in India, do I still have to disclose my global income? No, sir. If you are 119 days, your status continues to be a non-resident and you need not disclose anything. But in case your income is more than chargeable to tax in India, that is Indian income, then only you need to file the return, etc. Nothing otherwise you need not do, because your status, there is no change, and your this amendment is not affecting at all to you. What about income from India, resident or ordinary resident OCI? No can I ask the moderator, Dilip Sinha ji, can we take some questions? You can ask some question or some issues, because I believe you can come on the screen.
James?
Yeah.
Hello.
May I request? Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Okay. I will, on behalf of, okay. Yes, sir. James, how are you? All well? Everything okay?
Yeah,
I have
absolutely. Yes, please.
few questions come to us. The number one is for a deemed resident and ordinary resident, is overseas assets needs to be disclosed in returns? If so, is there a threshold?
No, see, the law in India is very clear. A resident is required to disclose all financial interests which he has outside India. As I said, there is no difference in the residential status as for resident and not ordinary resident, because under the Indian income tax, resident but not ordinary resident will be considered to be resident. He will be required to disclose financial interest, and there is no threshold for this. On the contrary, there are severe penalty in case you do not disclose the financial interest. The only exemption available is that in case the total value of the such investment outside total value of the money in the bank account is then less than rupees 6 lakh, then probably then no penalty is leviable. But otherwise, there is no threshold available. Every resident, including resident but not ordinary resident, while filing the return, will be required to fill in the what we call a Schedule FA, that is a foreign assets, including even $1 or one equity share you are holding anywhere, any interest you are holding.
Okay. Another question which has come up is IT authority, can the IT authorities scrutinize overseas bank accounts?
Answer will be yes. See, as on date, you will be filing the tax return in India because your income is more than 15 lakh rupees. And while filing return, he can raise all questions about you and say that what are your investment, what are the sources, unless one say that it is not relevant. But the judicature, that is what one of my write-up I have stated, that the challenge of this amendment will be the extra jurisdiction which assessing officer is likely to get over the over the real non-resident, but which are being termed as a resident but not ordinary resident. Because in my opinion, this clause of reducing this period from 182 days to 120 days probably is not going to work in the manner in which the government wants to operate it. It has been stated in the Finance Act that it is an anti-tax abuse provision. And one of the reasons which has been stated is that there are many peoples in India which operate business from India, but they arrange their affair that their stay in India is less than 182 days. And that's why they want to discourage that. So these people should not be in India for say more than 120 days. That's a criteria which they intend to do it. But frankly, the issue will be that in the case, all such cases, people who visit here and who get in this clause, because I believe beside the businesses, there are many people who are employed outside India, who are doing profession outside India. They have nothing to do with India except investment income in India, maybe some interest income, maybe some dividend income, maybe rental income, and such income may exceed rupees 15 lakh. So they will get it a state of a resident. And once you get a state of a resident, but even though non-ordinary resident, the assessing officer will be well within his right to ask that what are your other income and justify me that this income has not arisen from India. We have an experience on the Black Money Act, which there are assessments are going on, or earlier with HSBC bank account, where who were really non-resident and they were having some transaction outside India. They were all called upon to explain the sources from where this money has generated outside India or in the bank account. So that challenge will, I believe, will still persist.
Okay.
Mr.
If person leaves foreign employment and settle down in India for good, he earns income on his foreign assets as well. When would the tax liability arise for him and what are the implications? A person who leaves UAE, for example, and settles in India for good. So what, because he earned some foreign income, assets are also there because he will be having some deposits. So at what point in time he will be taxed?
Let me just explain you.
Yeah.
See, when you are a non-resident, you are liable to pay tax only on Indian income.
Okay.
When you are a resident, you are liable to pay global tax on global income. In order to address the issue which you have raised, India has created this third category, resident but not ordinary resident. And the law, this section 6.6, where this amendment has been made, provide that a person individual shall be considered to be a resident but not ordinary resident if he has been a non-resident in 9 out of the 10 years. Suppose the person the example you have given has been a non-resident, say for the last 10 years, he has been 10, 20 years. Now he wants to return back to India. In the first year when he returns to India, he will be a resident but not ordinary resident because all along the last 10 years, he has been a non-resident. In the next year also, he will be a resident but not ordinary resident because out of the 10 years, he has been a non-resident, 9 years. But in the third year, he will become a fully resident. Now, for the first 2 years, in the year in which he has returned to India, and the year in which and the subsequent year, in both these years, he will be liable to pay tax on income which has accrued in India only, or a business which is running from India. Now, there is a possibility when such person returns to India, say now till March 2020, if this person was a non-resident in UAE itself, and May onward, this person shift to India and start operating there. but at the same time, he continues to run a business or something like this, that situation may arise on them. Now, in that case, he will continue to have a resident and not only resident, but if he is running or managing any business or profession outside India from India, that income will become chargeable to tax in India in the very first year. But other than that, all his income outside India will continue to be exempt. So will be the second year. But third year onward, he will be a fully resident. His status as a resident but not ordinary resident will go. In that year, all his income from whatever sources will be there will be chargeable to tax. So in the first 2 years, the value interest income earned outside India or capital gain from a property outside India or shares in investment held outside India, all that will be exempt in the first 2 years. That is why when a person is returning to India, some advisory is normally given that what he need to do with the foreign assets and how he should operate it out. Because till such time, he is enjoying the status of a non-resident or resident but not ordinary resident. If any income which has accrued but he has not encashed, he should try to encash so that when he becomes a resident, that income does not become chargeable to tax. That's a normal thing. I hope I have cleared your question.
Yes, absolutely. Over to you, Mohammed.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Yes, Dilip.
Yeah, this is Dilip. Sorry, Mohammed, just one question. Regarding the gift tax. So as a NRI, let's say under the new rule below the 120 days, you are in India and you are a fully non-resident and you are over last 5 years, 10 years, whatever, you continue to be a fully non-resident. Then the gift to your direct relatives, as I understand, is non-taxable. Is there a limit to that or a cap to it, like to your parents or your children? If you are from your non-resident income, you are gifting them?
No.
Is there any
Under
tax
the
implication?
Under the Indian Income Tax Act, I will just explain. There used to be an old Gift Tax Act, which was abolished way back in 1998. Thereafter, any gift to a relative, which is a defined relative, lineal ascendant or descendant, brother, sister, spouse, etc., whatever may be the amount, in whatever consideration, whether it is money, gold, bullion, property, etc., is fully exempt under the Income Tax Act. Only rule which comes into operation is that in case there are that was the old law which remained unamended till date. In case you gift to your spouse or to your minor child or your to daughter-in-law, now in that case, income which will accrue and arise on account of that gift to that person, that income will be chargeable to tax in your hand, not in the hand of the donee. That's the only exclusion. But there is no gift tax, there is no tax on transfer or gift of money, property, etc. within the relative. But relative is a narrow compass, which is as per the income tax, there is a defined relation, not all extended relation. And in that too also, I just for the sake of clarity, I may just clarify. If uncle gives a gift to nephew, it is within the relative. But nephew gives a gift to relative uncle, then he doesn't fall within the meaning of the relative. Just need to be clear on this issue.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Jahan sir.
Mr. Muhammad, I think want to answer.
Yeah, James, would you like to conclude?
Yeah. I think we are done with the questions. I hope there aren't any more questions there.
There are many questions. Should I look at some questions with
a couple of questions because we have another 4-5 minutes left. We can just maybe look at that and finish it.
Okay, just let me look into what are the questions. Sir, it looks like anti-investment provision as someone who does not earn 15 lakh rupees. I have no comment to say. Before there was a rule, when someone returned to India 7 years after he returned, the income will not be taxed in India, same as that of a NRE. What is the rule now? So that was the old rules, sir. Now there is no such rule. Rule is 2 years only, as I explained to you. Now there is no further exemption on that part. Exemption is very specific. FCNR account and NRE account deposit, they continue to be exempt because the law specifically make an exemption about those FCNR, etc. But there, other than that, what I have explained to you, there is no other exemption. I may just say before I conclude on that part is that these two provisions which have been brought has been brought as an anti-tax provision. But my impression and my feeling personally is that such provision should not normally hit an ordinary Indian citizen who are a non-resident. I am of the view that non-resident Indians are contributing a lot to the cause of the Indian nation. A lot of remittances comes up, a lot of investments come in, and government always looks upon the non-resident Indians for as and when the situation and difficulty arises on a foreign exchange, and even otherwise when country is having a trouble like it, including the present crisis which is arising on account of the coronavirus. So I am always of the view that such provision should always be dealt with a soft hand, because it may not be so easy for a non-resident to comply with such complex and difficult provision. As rightly put in one of the question was, artificial intelligence may be required. One to monitor oneself, one may not fall into the trap and get taxed unintendedly on some income which is not likely to be taxed, should not have been taxed. So that's my impression. But tax authorities have their own way of thinking and principles. They work it out in a manner to avoid tax evasion on the issues. There may be many people, maybe few people who would have exploited and misused certain provision. But these types of provision do create some complexity for entire community of the non-resident, which my impression is. With this, my sincere thanks to Dilip ji, to Mr. James, who has given me the invitation on this, and Mr. Mohammed for arranging this and giving me an opportunity to interact with my fellow Indian citizens who happen to be spread across the UAE. And I look upon for all their welfare. And India or the globe is passing through a very difficult time because of the coronavirus. Let's all hope the government and the doctors which are working overnight will be able to handle and overcome this crisis. Thank you, Dilip ji. Thank you, Mr. James.
Thank you, Jain Saab.
It's my role to just express sincere thanks on behalf of the Indian Business and Professional Council, its board of directors, all the coordinator general, everybody. We would like to thank you for this excellent exposition and insight on a very difficult subject. People have always got confused with that. What I see is that this tiebreaker rule is going to apply to a lot of our people, which I can see because a lot of them have got investments in India on one side, and they go and stay more than 120 days. At the same time, they have 182, 183 days of stay here, and they get the TRC. So this is one consolation, I would say, that for many of the businesses. So I would like to thank you once again for your insights. I'm sure that the audience, we had a good number of questions that came in. And if they still have some more questions, they can always write to us, and then Jain Saab should be happy enough to and glad enough to do that for us.
Always play, sir.
Yes, thank you. And I would like to thank Dilip Sinha, Coordinator General, and then CB and his team, and of course our the silent role player of Mohammed Satawala, who is the technical guy who is running behind the show for everything, and also the audience for listening and coming online at this time with difficult times. IBPC would like to organize such meetings on important topics in the times to come too. So please let us know. On behalf of the steering committee of AAA, I would like to thank all my fellow committee members, Mahendra Acharbai, Sandhanam Venkatesh, Naveen Sharma, and Sam Manipadam for joining us and putting up the show together. Thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Jain, for joining in, and thank you all the members for coming in. Let's look forward to more topics in future, and look forward to interacting you with Mr. Jain. And thank you, and stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
Stay safe.